What gives you hope about this whole thing we got going on? Uh, America and human civilization.
Okay, so this is not mine, but this is a Gene Epstein, who's is a really brilliant economist, and a great guy. And he told me this once, and I just always loved it. And so I call it Epstein's case, not that Epstein, different Epstein, Gene Epstein, no relation. I want to be clear on that. Okay, this is Gene's. Let's call it Gene's case for radical optimism. And the way he put it was, he goes, so imagine you were sitting around in 1845, and like you're at the height of, the slavery, and you were like, hey, in 20 years, slavery is going to be abolished across the West. And like, if you told that to someone, they'd be like, dude, slavery has existed for all of human history. Slavery is, look around. It's not going anywhere. You'd have to be out of your mind to think we're 20 years away from abolishing slavery. And yet we were. I mean, it's just like the greatest thing in the history of the world. And unfortunately, America had to fight a bloody civil war to get there, but many other countries didn't. And they just walked away from what had been the status quo forever. And just stop doing it. And now, look, you can argue there's slavery by other names and things like that. And to some degree, paying an income tax is some degree of slavery. But there is not chattel slavery in the way that there used to be. And that is like an incredible advance for humanity. And then the other example he would give is he was talking about how at the beginning of the Reagan administration, like in 1981, that the neocons, because when he was trying to have détente with Russia, the neocons were in the press being like, he just guaranteed another 100 years of Soviet dominance, And if someone had just been to you like, hey, listen, calm down. In 10 years, there won't be a Soviet Union. It's just been like, what are you, like, okay, nice idea, but you're out of your fucking mind. And yet that was true too. And so there is, even when, and you can see some dynamics even in our politics today where, like, you know, 3 years ago, I was really concerned about whether they'd shut the whole thing down. I mean, like when it was during the COVID times and during times where it was like everyone I knew was just getting strikes on all their channels. And if you just even wanted to like talk about how like there are people being vaccine injured, you'd like lose your YouTube channel, get people getting kicked off Twitter left and right. And I just saw it and I was like, dude, the grasp is just getting tighter and tighter and tighter. The regime is not going to allow these alternative voices, in here, and they're just getting too big, and they're going to shut this whole thing down, and I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do after that. And I was totally wrong. The trend totally went in the other direction. And things are now at a point where it's like, I couldn't even imagine it. I never would have envisioned Elon Musk was going to get $44 billion together and buy Twitter. And then he was, it's like, and so I just think that if you kind of like zoom out, I think that the regime has lost their monopoly on propaganda. And this opens up enormous possibilities for what, I remember so vividly 2002. And 2002, 9/11 happened in late 2001. We invaded Iraq in 2003. But all of 2002 was a massive propaganda campaign, just constantly laying down the blueprints for this war that we knew was George W. Bush was about to launch. And it was, they have weapons of mass destruction. They were in on 9/11. They're friends with Al Qaeda. They're going to hand this weapon that they don't have off to the terrorists they're not friends with. And then they're going to nuke Kansas. And every right winger, by the way, this is also, sorry for rambling a little here, but this is also one of the reasons why when the Jew haters will say things like, they'll be like, oh, look, all of the Jews support Israel, or 70% of the Jews vote this way, or the 70% of the Jews support this way. It's like, listen, I don't like blaming, or even when the Palestine haters will say 70% of Gazans support Hamas or whatever. It's like, okay, look, I remember a time in this country, I know I'm going back 20 years, but every right-winger in this country was completely convinced that we have to go invade Iraq because he has weapons of mass destruction, and you're some type of leftist homo if you don't agree with that. That was the entire culture in this country. And it was the one thing that the New York Times and Bill O'Reilly and CNN and the Washington Post all agreed on. They were all on board selling this war. You could not do that today. They could not get away with that today. Because if they did, how do you control this entire problem? You tell me.
Mhm.
How do you control Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson? How do you get these guys to go? They're not going to go along with it. And in fact, they're almost definitely going to have people on their show who are just tearing it apart. And so I just look at that and I go like, we're at a place now where we have this world of possibilities that would have seemed impossible just so recently. And so just thinking like all of that rambling stew, whatever all that was, that leaves me feeling very, very hopeful for the future.
Yeah, there's a lot of social and political progress in that rambling stew over the decades and the centuries. For me, probably some of the technological progress is really exciting. Me personally, it just fills me with hope whenever I see the rockets go up. To clarify,
Not the ones going into Gaza, the ones going into outer space, I assume.
you had to clarify the Epstein thing, the Epstein rule. And I have to clarify exactly which rockets. SpaceX and Blue Origin rockets, so taking humans out to space, and for us to be among the stars. Like, it makes me feel like we're gonna make it. Because the bleaker times throughout human history, you think, there's just a sense, you're right, during COVID, there's a sense of like, for many reasons, maybe just a simple psychological human reason, it felt like bleak. Like, fuck, I don't think we as a civilization are ready. If we can't handle this pandemic from a policy perspective, from a human perspective, economic perspective, like this is like pandemic light. There's going to be other bigger troubles coming our way.
Yeah.
And then now you have this kind of, again, the rockets are going up. It's like first of all, we'll colonize space and other planets, and we're inventive motherfuckers. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. And then certainly, like for me, just personally, because this has like really touched my life, but the innovations in medical technology are just stunts. And my son had a congenital heart defect and open heart surgery when he was 3 days old. And this is like something that 20 years ago I would have lost my child, and he's fine, just absolutely fine, because it's just amazing what these surgeons and cardiologists and, neonatologists and all of them, what they do now is like goddamn magic. And so there was always something about it was almost like that inoculated me against ever having a sense of like, well, I wish it was a previous time. Because, like, now, sorry, in a previous time, I lose my kid. So I don't get whatever other challenges there are out here. Like, I'll take that trade off where this baby survives and gets a shot at having a life. And there is a lot of that stuff is just kind of easy to take for granted. And it's like, when it touches your life, you don't take it for granted as much. But it's just like, no, it really is. There are miracles going on all over the place now that, like, everybody in human history did not have access to.
All right, brother. It's great to finally meet a friend and have a conversation.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this.
And I can't wait to talk to you again, brother.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.